There it is. All right.
All right, here we go. Hello there, and welcome to The Bright Eyed. Today, my guest is the founder and executive director of Dancer for Dancer, a nonprofit initiative with the goal of uniting a global dance community and tackling stigmatized topics. Samantha Parr, a high school senior based in California, has been a classical ballet dancer for 15 years. Outside of dance, Samantha is also the editor in chief of her school newspaper. Welcome to the show, Samantha.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
It's so great to have you. I feel like I mentioned this when you first came in to the Zoom meeting, but I genuinely think this is like a topic that I've not talked about on this podcast before, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So I'm very excited to get into it. So first off, your organization is about dance, so I want to know a little bit more about where that initial passion came from. So what about ballet and dance has kept you passionate about it for so long?
Yeah, so I've been dancing since I was like 3 years old and I'm 18 now, so 15 years. That's a long time. I mean, I feel like most kids don't stick with something that long. I know I did
Right.
like all different sorts of things growing up. I did like track and soccer and like piano and all these different things, but ballet has been the one thing that kind of prevailed over all those years. And now it's like the only thing that not really, but it's kind of like my main thing now. And so I just kind of feel like performing is like the one thing that I think is central to my passion. And so obviously COVID was really hard not being able to perform, but I just kind of love performing for others and like the feeling that you get when you're like sharing your art with people that I feel like in today's world is not very common because of technology. And, I just think everything is just moving so fast that people don't stop and kind of just like watch live art as often. And so I just kind of love the idea that like I'm a part of an art form that is very traditional and that it's like kind of still the way that it has been for so long as far as like the art form itself. Again, there are so many other things that are wrong with it, like we're going to talk about it later, but just like the art itself, that I just love the idea that you know it's kind of a unique thing to have in today's world, and it's still surviving. So I think it's just really amazing. And also just like internally, I just love the idea that like in ballet especially, but I think in all dance too, that you're never like perfect, you're never done. Like you can always keep working at it, which is both kind of a defeating and also an inspiring thing because because like every day you can go to the studio and you'll know that you'll be stuff to work on and that you can always improve, which I think it frustrates me at times, but I think overall I think it kind of motivates me to keep going back and improving as much as I can, and just to see the progress. I think is like a really gratifying thing to just keep going back and working at something.
Right. And I never really thought about it that way. You're right. Dance is one of those things where it's like never you reach a certain level and you're done with dance as a whole. And I kind of like that idea of like always having to keep working at something. I can see, as you were alluding to, how that might be also present like some challenges, and I can totally relate. But really, with anything, I think those activities where like you're constantly improving yourself and like growing, and there's just so much to learn. That's very exciting. So I can totally relate to that.
Mhm.
And you kind of mentioned it when you were talking about your love for dance, but what are some challenges that you have experienced as a dancer and that you know many dancers have experienced, and that you are currently working to address through your organization?
Um, just like the first thoughts comes to mind is probably like perfectionism, and I feel like ballet is kind of rooted in perfectionism, and it kind of like it's debilitating at some points, I feel like. And I think that that takes form in different ways. I think that in one way it's in the form of like eating disorders and like body dysmorphia, like kind of like that feeling that you're never going to be thin enough, you're never going to like be healthy or like eat clean enough to be a dancer. And so I think that like that kind of whole side of it is definitely a challenge. I know that I think that most dancers that I know have had times in their life when they've dealt with that kind of a thing before. And also I think just like, yeah, that's kind of like the main thing. I think that like also, I mean, I haven't experienced any form of like discrimination, but I know that a lot of dancers do, who are a part of marginalized communities. And I feel like that also comes from the fact that ballet is very like uniform, and there's like an ideal of like a tall, thin, white, blonde dancer with like perfect feet, like bendy feet, and just like perfect basically, and also kind of whitewashed. And so it's like there's a lot of stereotypes and I guess like ideals that the dance community kind of enforces throughout the years that I feel like a lot of people who don't fit into that ideal find a lot of extra challenges that, you know, others might like not experience. And so um that's kind of a jumbled answer, but I also yeah, like I just feel like that the whole central thing is that there is a pretty clear ideal. I think that like a lot of companies are working to improve that and to work against it, but also like it still is underlying everything, I think. So yeah.
Right. And I never really thought about that, but that makes sense. I mean, I'm not in a dance studio, probably as much as you are, so I don't have that firsthand experience, but it makes sense. You know, you're standing in front of a mirror every time you're rehearsing, you're with other people, and I think what you said about ballet in particular, just like inherently being a little bit more uniform, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and I can totally see where those issues can arise from there. So when you started going through this, was it easy for you to reach out to your dancer friends and talk about things, or do you kind of like was it still a little stigmatized, so it felt kind of strange to reach out?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I mean like my main thing that I dealt with was like body dysmorphia and like disordered eating habits. And so I kind of dealt with it on my own and I didn't really reach out to anyone, not even like my parents or like anyone at school like anyone at school I could talk to. And I just kind of felt like I was definitely alone. And but I kind of also like knew that my friends were kind of like going through similar things because I kind of like saw them and I was like, okay, so you're not like you're not well either, so I don't know what I am. And so like I kind of had like a indirect feeling that they were also struggling, but I didn't. I felt like there was kind of like a wall between us, and I was like, we can't like talk about this. It's kind of like weird because like we're all dealing with this, but there's like it's still so weird to talk about it. And so that's kind of like what I was feeling at that point. And so it kind of just was this uncomfortable feeling in my gut, and I was like, this is kind of icky. So yeah, that's kind of how I was feeling at that point.
Right. And that's what I think is so cool about your organization, which I promise we will talk about. I know we keep mentioning it. But I think that's what's really cool about your organization is you're working to build that community. And it's really cool to see how your own experiences have inspired you to take action and like really make that easier and provide more support for other people who are going through that. So I think that's like an incredible test of like grit and perseverance that you have. And I'm very excited to talk about your nonprofit. So Dancer for Dancer. So tell us a little bit about it and what inspired you to start it.
Yeah, so D for D is what we call it. And basically, it is a nonprofit initiative. And so it's not so much, it is an organization, but I feel like it's rooted in this whole, I guess, like mission of uniting the dance community and providing a space for dancers to talk and connect and to just like feel like they're not alone. And so basically, like, I feel like the whole thing kind of started when I was like 12 years old. I would go to all these like competitions. I was getting very into ballet at this point. So I was going to all these competitions, conventions, like summer intensives, which is like really spend like 6 weeks at like a professional school, like 8 hours a day. And it's like over the summer and it's very intense. And so um, I went to a lot of those. And so I went to one that was like very prestigious. And so it was kind of like a big deal that I got in. And so when I was there, I felt a lot of imposter syndrome. I was like, wow, I don't know why I'm here. Like, this is kind of insane. But I think beyond that, I definitely began to like realize how kind of like screwed up the whole ballet culture is because I was noticing all these girls who were so talented and they were talking all about, you know, they were like, oh, like I ate 100 calories yesterday, or like I'm like trying to lose weight, or like just kind of just like very triggering things. And I was like, wow, for someone who's also dealing with, you know, a lot of things on my own, it was kind of like almost like they like made like an impression on me that like I didn't really need at that point. And so I just kind of began to experience, and they, were very cliquey about like, we're the good dancers, like the bad dancers had their own group. So it's like, it was very like segregated by, I guess, like talent as well. And so that was kind of an experience that I feel like I definitely like, I appreciated the experience to have gone, but there also came a lot of things that I didn't really expect. And so I was kind of like blindsided by it. Like, wow, this is the real dance community. It's like this kind of. And then after that, I also got cast in like a lead role at my studio, which I am very grateful for. It was an amazing experience. But, I had an experience where we had to audition for this role and someone didn't get it. And so there was a lot of like toxic competition and like verbal threats that I was experiencing because I got the role. And so it's just like those kind of things kind of began to build up in me. And I didn't really have a space to like continuously talk about them and like kind of just like vent with people who like really did understand what I was going through. And so over COVID in like May of 2020, obviously we were all at home. I was kind of bored. I never really had time to, I feel like I kind of like put off all these feelings for so long because I was just so busy. And I was like, it's fine. It's just like part of the art form. Like it's whatever. It's just part of it. But I think when COVID happened, I feel like I kind of had a lot of time to like reflect and be like, yeah, that's like not how it should be. Like, this is not normal. I shouldn't just be like suppressing all this and like dealing with it on my own. So I was like, okay, so I know that, I'm not the only one, obviously, who's dealing with this stuff in such a big industry. So I was like, okay, so what can I do to kind of at least try to start the conversations? I really wanted to have a place for dancers to, again, like connect and whatnot. And so my initial idea for D4D was to do like some Zoom calls with people in like just my area to talk about, or just to have people from different studios connecting, because there's a lot of like inter-studio like competition stuff. So I was like, okay, so I want to like have a space for people in my community to connect and whatever. And so we had a few of those about discrimination, about mental health, about all these different things, about many different topics. And then kind of one time, this is one instance where someone from England found our account and was like, hey, this is really cool. Like, I want to get involved, but like your time zone is not, it's not going to work because the time zone thing. And I was like, okay, cool. So I planned like the first international Zoom call. I think it was in like November of 2020. We had a Zoom call with dancers from England and dancers from like the US, like California mainly, because that's where I'm from. And it was really cool to just kind of like hear their voices and like hear how dance has impacted them and like what they've been going through as a dancer, and how similar our experiences were, even though we were so far apart. We couldn't be any more different, but at the same time we were like very much the same. And so that kind of feeling was like very interesting to me, and I wanted to do more of that. And so we hosted a few more of those international Zoom calls. We also began to reach out to kind of like prominent dancers, like celebrity dancers or people in like TV shows. And so we got this actress named Kashmir Gillette. She was on the show Tiny Pretty Things. And so that whole film focused, or the show focused on like stereotypes in dance. A lot of them, it was placed in a ballet studio. And so it was all about like competition. And so I feel like it kind of like aligned with what we were trying to tackle at D4D. So we got her to come do a call, and we got a lot of people on that call, like a couple hundred. And that kind of was like a catalyst for like our big growth beyond just starting it. And so after that, like people began to get more involved and began to come to more of our conversations. And so our team kind of grew. At first I had like 10 ambassadors. Today we have like 30 ambassadors, and then we have 10 like core team members. And so they are like directors of social media, international relations, outreach, events, and whatnot. And so now we have a pretty big team, but it's still pretty much me running the show. So I do have an assistant, and so I'm hoping that I can kind of transfer the reins over to her at one point, because she is younger than me and I'm a senior in high school. But I still want to keep this going, and like I still hope that it continues to grow and maybe just gets kind of like passed down through generations, and just to have because I mean, it is like a space for like teen dancers kind of. So the goal is to keep that growing with more teens coming into it. And so that's kind of my goal. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did.
No,
But
that's perfect. I think that's amazing. Just like hearing like, where you started and then how much you've grown. I mean, starting from a single Zoom call to having 30 ambassadors and your team expanding and you looking to like even pass it down. I think that's absolutely incredible. So I commend you for everything that you've been doing. I can tell you're super passionate about this, which I think really matters. I think when people start things, they're, a lot of things in our head like, oh, I'm not a good enough at leadership to start something, or like I don't know anything about social media, I don't know if I can do that. But honestly, like that passion is like the most important part.
love that.
Everything else is things that you can learn.
Mhm.
I spent hours YouTubing audio equipment. I didn't know anything about it. And so I think like seeing that initial passion from hearing you talk about your organization, I can tell that that's really what like propelled you this far. And I think that's absolutely incredible. Um, and so through all of the events that you've been doing, through your work, it's been 2 years. That's that's such a long time. That's awesome. What has been like the most memorable moment from that experience, or like the part of that journey that you're the most proud of?
Oh gosh. I don't know if there's like one moment that I feel like I was like, yes, this is it. Like, I feel like that the organization did really grow in a pretty like it was a pretty steady way. And so I don't know if there's like one moment, but I definitely will say that like the most gratifying thing for me that I feel like has been like overall the most important thing to me has been just the idea that like I've had kind of like a personal impact in a lot of people's lives. And even though D4D, I mean, I think that D4D is a rather small organization compared to many others. So we have engaged over like 500 dancers as members. And so I mean, it sounds like pretty big, but like in comparison to like the whole dance community, it's like a very small sliver. But I feel like because it is a relatively small group of people, I feel like that it has had more of a personal impact on people's lives. And I feel like that has been really impactful. And like I mean, we have like a pretty like solid base of like returning members and like people that get involved a lot. And I can like name all of them by like first name, and like they are from all over the place. Like we've had dancers from like over 55 countries get involved. And so I can name like all of them by name. And so I just feel like the idea that like those people know that like, they're part of something that like I created, and that like they know that they're part of a community that is like kind of bigger than themselves in a way. I feel like that has been good for me and for them. Like it kind of has helped me as well as it's helped them. And so I feel like this idea that like I've had an impact on people's lives has been really gratifying. And I feel like that has been the most important thing that I've kind of like taken away from it, and that I'm like, grateful for, I guess. Um, and just like every time that we get like someone new in our programs, I'm like, yay, this is so cool. Like I still get like very excited when like new people join. And it's like, I don't think that we're still trying to like grow, obviously, but I feel like we have a pretty strong base. And so it is just like really amazing to have people, still getting involved and still wanting to be part of our mission. And so, yeah.
Right. No, totally. I can totally relate to like that feeling like when someone like reaches out to you and they're like, "Oh my God, I really like this event," or like, "Oh, this sounds cool," or they like join something, or for me, fill out like a guest application. Like that excitement 100% is still there and it does not like diminish at all.
Mhm.
And I kind of want to go back to something that we talked about earlier and that you mentioned in your last response, that idea of like connecting with people all over the world and being able to like form connections even though like you feel like your worlds apart. And I can totally relate to that. I think like doing this podcast, that's been something that I've experienced, like talking to people from all over the world, in Turkey, in England, like everywhere. And I was a little nervous at first because I was like, oh, I feel like I don't know enough. I don't know if I'm gonna like be able to come up with questions and stuff. But honestly, like the second the interview started, like I realized just how much we had in common. And
Mhm.
then it was so much easier to connect from there. So, when you were kind of talking to people from all over the world, what are some things that you kind of were able to connect with, and how has that kind of expanded your worldview?
Yeah, I definitely feel like um the people that I've met through this, they're not all, ballet dancers, which I kind of thought, oh, well, I'll just do it for ballerinas. But I've met so many people that are not ballerinas, and that I've just kind of like learned a lot about what dance is kind of like in their countries. And so last, or like a couple weeks ago, actually, we did this, we launched this new kind of program called the Global Dance Exchange. And so basically, like the whole goal is to have groups of dancers kind of pairing up and to teach each other their styles. And so we kind of like piloted it a couple weeks ago. And so it was a group of ballerinas in NorCal, where I'm from, and then a group of Bollywood dancers in India. And so we taught each other our styles, and that was just like super exciting, just to like get to like know a different style and just to meet them and hear from them about what it's like for them. And I think just back to like the whole conversation thing, because we kind of shifted our mission. We are not doing as many of the conversations, but now we're kind of trying to expand like dance education and like just the idea of like cultural awareness of like different styles and stuff. And so in our whole thing with the conversations, I feel like just getting to talk to them and just kind of hear about how, dance looks so different. Even ballet looks so different in other parts of the world, but we are all like dancers and we're all working towards the same goals. And so, I could be talking to whatever, like a Malaysian dancer or an English ballet dancer or an Australian contemporary dancer, but the idea that like even though some people's English is not that good and we had to like do a lot of like translation stuff, or if the Wi-Fi is terrible in some parts of the world or whatever it is, like behind all of that, we're all dancers, and it's kind of like an unspoken thing where we're kind of like we kind of get each other in a weird way. And so that kind of feeling is really exciting, I think, that just because I don't think that anyone would have ever like met these people outside of D4D, and so that's kind of a cool thought. But yeah.
Right. No, I agree. You're like fostering that connection for people. And it sounds like you also benefited from that too. I think that's what's really cool about like this kind of work, like trying to make a difference and things like that, is you don't realize how much that's going to impact you as well.
Yeah.
And it's just really cool to see kind of you growing with your organization and growing with the people that you're trying to impact. And so, what are your kind of future plans for Dancer for Dancer? I know we talked about maybe shifting, but before you kind of give it to the next generation of Dancer for Dancer people, like what are you kind of thinking?
So as I said, we recently launched a new program, and so we're kind of working on growing that. And then we also have this other program that we launched like last year. It's called Pals Around the World. And so basically it's kind of like we're pairing up different dancers from different areas just to have a connection, like a verbal connection, kind of like a little virtual pen pal thing. So we have that, and then we also have the like style exchange program. And so like I think expanding those, because I've kind of noticed how with COVID kind of, I guess, like waning a little bit, people are kind of a little bit sick of Zoom, which is kind of like unfortunate for D4D because the whole thing kind of like started over COVID. But I feel like that like we're just trying to grow with the times and like just kind of trying to, because I mean, it did start during COVID. And so it's a whole different world now, I feel like. And so I guess just like trying to keep shifting our programs to align with what people want, and just to trying to keep, I guess, just like getting involved with our community and like really giving them what they want to do and how they want to achieve our mission together. I feel like it's really important. So yeah, like expanding our programs that we're doing right now and just trying to get dancers involved. And I just kind of like overall, like big picture, I just kind of want like most dancers at least hopefully to know at least that D4D exists for them if they ever want to come or get involved. It's a place for them, and that like just trying to engage as many dancers as possible in our mission is kind of like my goal. And so whatever that looks like, uh we're just going to try to achieve it. And so yeah.
That's amazing. And I have no doubt that you're going to reach that, all that and more. These programs sound incredible. And I'm so excited to see how that impacts the people that you're working with and hopefully more too. That's so incredible. Thank you so much for talking with me today. This was super fun for me because I'm not in the dance world. And so I got to know a little bit more about what that's like. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, this is so fun.
Yay, I'm glad. Well, I mean, before we wrap up, I would love to ask you the one last question. If the whole world was listening to you right now, what would you say?
I think I would say, mainly to young people like myself, I guess, that like if you always wait until the right time, there's never a right time, is what I'm trying to say. Like there's never going to be a right time or a perfect time when you can like go after your dreams or like start something new. You know, if there was the right time, I mean, I don't think I've ever reached the right time to start D4D, but I kind of just went for it and I had a gut feeling and a passion. And I feel like if you have that, even if you don't have the skills, I just feel like as long as like just don't wait to do anything, just go for it and you'll learn along the way. But I just kind of feel like the only thing in your way is you. And so if you can overcome that and really just kind of like dive in head first and just see what happens, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? Doesn't work out, you know, it fails. You can try to like learn. You can either stop or you can keep going and try to learn from your mistakes. But I just kind of feel like, you know, don't hold off or wait until the perfect time because I don't think it'll ever like really come. And so yeah.